All right, so we have everything installed. Let's talk about using or running TypeScript and the basic workflow that you'll follow. So the first thing we need to do is create some file where we can write TypeScript inside of. Although if you're using the playground, you actually don't need to do that. But if we're running anything locally, I'm going to need to make a new file, and it needs to end in the .ts extension. So anything .ts. Let's go with basics.ts. Sure, it doesn't matter. We're not going to be using this file for anything past this video, so you'll probably want to delete it anyway. But that .ts tells our editor, tells VS Code, this is TypeScript. See the little TypeScript logo there. There is one minor note around extensions. There's a second extension you'll see, and we'll cover this when we get to React and TypeScript. Of course, it only matters if you know React, but .tsx is TypeScript plus JSX files, where we can write JSX syntax with TypeScript. If you don't know what any of that is, don't worry. Almost exclusively throughout the course, we'll be using .ts. Okay, so unlike a lot of technologies where we write some code and then we have to go execute that code in order for it to do anything, with TypeScript, we get functionality, we get TypeScript hovering over us and watching everything we do immediately just in our editor. So I can start typing something like, let's use a math method. And of course, we've got all of TypeScript to learn, so there's not much that we can do right now. But let's do something like math.round. So we use this method, right? This is plain old JavaScript that takes some number and returns a rounded version. But if we look, immediately I'm getting red squigglies. I'm getting this, it's almost like Microsoft Word, right? I'm getting spell check, but for code. And this is TypeScript. TypeScript immediately is telling me, you've got a problem. We expected one argument, but we got 0. So it says an argument for x was not provided, and x has to be a number, which is what this is telling me here. We will learn all about this syntax, but as you can see, I'm getting a warning immediately. I don't have to run TypeScript. I don't have to do anything from the terminal, and it's giving me some tips. It's basically giving me an error message. I'll put a number in there, and it's happy. I put something in there like hello or hegello, and it is not happy. It says you cannot give me a string. It's not assignable to a parameter of type number. That's coming from TypeScript. JavaScript doesn't do that, right? If you type JavaScript in VS Code, you don't get any of this stuff. So that's just a very simple example, but so much of what we do in TypeScript is not actually executing a file or compiling it, but it's just writing code and getting those errors immediately. And then there is the second piece, which is actually compiling our code. And I'll show an example of that. Let's say that I have a couple of console.logs in here. Hello, and console.log, goodbye. And then, sure, I'll do a math.round of this number, and we will console.log that number. Okay, so we have some code, some really impressive code that right now is in a TypeScript file. And I want to be able to compile this to JavaScript. Right? That's the whole point of using TypeScript, or that is the end goal. We write our TypeScript code and then we compile it to JavaScript that we can then execute. So I'm going to open up my terminal. I can do this in a separate terminal where I navigate to the right place and I find the directory where this file is. Or if you prefer, and what I'm going to do in this course just to keep it nice and easy and all in one window, is open the VS Code integrated terminal. And no, I don't want to update right now. People are watching this, can't be updating. So I'm looking at this file, right? It's right there, basics.ts. And I can compile this file using the magical tsc command that we installed a couple videos ago. And then I can specify the file. Now don't worry, we're going to cover compilation in depth. This is just a quick rundown of how it works, but I'm just going to hit enter and you'll see in a moment I now have a second file called basics.js. The thing is, this TypeScript file had nothing TypeScripty about it. In terms of the syntax, it's just plain old JavaScript. So the compiled JavaScript file looks exactly the same, but it is valid JavaScript. And if I had some TypeScripty stuff in here that is not valid, for example, I could do something like pi, and then this weird colon number thing we're about to cover, and then set that equal to 3.14159. This is not JavaScript. If I put this in a JavaScript file, I do get an error, and it's actually telling me you're trying to use TypeScript in JavaScript. So it's a very detailed error there. But now if I have this code and then I run the tsc command again, my TypeScript is once again compiled down to JavaScript, and you'll see that that weird syntax is removed. We get the JavaScript that results from this TypeScript. So those are the two steps of using TypeScript. One is just writing your code, getting error messages, sort of dealing with things as they come up in the editor. And then two is actually compiling your code, which sometimes can take a long time for a really large, complicated project. The things we're going to focus on, it's pretty much instantaneous. So TypeScript acts both as a spell check for our code, for our JavaScript, basically, but also it does the compilation, and we use the tsc command to accomplish that. But again, we're going to cover compilation in depth, and we have just scratched the surface. So I'm going to stop here because I can't spoil the rest of the course.